Welcome to the Moved to Meditate podcast. I'm your host, Addie D. Hilster. This is a place for vibrant discussions about mindfulness, movement practices, and ways to find more balance and presence in daily life. Here you'll find resources to help you progress on your path, as well as insightful conversations with mindful movement, yoga, meditation, and Dharma teachers from a range of traditions. On this podcast, we spotlight embodied approaches to mindfulness and the more contemplative aspects of movement practice. Listen in and connect to a community of like-minded practitioners. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 99 of the podcast. Thanks for joining me today. This is going to be a juicy episode on a topic that's been much on my mind lately, and that is the question of what really is and what isn't trauma-informed work in the yoga and movement spaces. My guest today, Hanna, and I decided to sit down and tackle this complicated topic after messaging back and forth a little bit on Instagram recently about some posts and different ads and things we've been seeing that we both found kind of questionable, or a lot questionable in some cases. Some of them were Yin Yoga specific, but others were coming from more general yoga or movement or wellness accounts. And maybe you've been seeing some of these kinds of things too, and you know what I'm talking about, where trauma-informed and somatic and terms like that have become these like marketing buzzwords, but what's being advertised or shared is not entirely or not at all in keeping with those principles. Some of it is potentially really harmful to people who might buy a product that promises miraculous results. Other examples we'll talk about are just kind of contributing to a fog of confusion around these terms and practices and what role a trauma-informed yoga teacher should be playing. So we thought it would be useful to dig into this and share some examples of what brings up red flags for us in this space, and also what we do look for in a genuine trauma-informed offering. In case you don't know Amanda yet, she is really steeped in this topic, and trauma-informed principles are the foundation of what she does through her business, Somatics. Amanda holds over 1,000 hours in yoga, anatomy, and physiology trainings, as well as extensive training and experience in holistic nutrition, meditation, mindfulness, neuroscience, and energetics. She has a BA in psychology and is currently undertaking her master's, and she holds regular workshops and trainings with an emphasis on trauma-informed facilitation, resilience, nervous system regulation, neuroscience, and embodied practices. She's also a Yin Yoga teacher trainer, and I've had her on the podcast as a guest before, way back in episode 33, when we talked about embodiment and Yin Yoga. So if you enjoyed today's conversation, definitely go back and catch that one too. It was a good one. Before we officially dive into this episode, I want to put out a last call for contributions for the upcoming 100th episode of the podcast. It's our next show, and it's going to be kind of a different format than usual. Not an interview, not a solo episode, but something that features the voices of listeners. And the theme is going to be why we practice. So I've been asking listeners like you to go over to my website and record a short message describing your practice, whether that's yoga or movement or meditation or something in that vein, and why you practice. And the messages I've received so far are so good, and I want to include your voice too, if you're up for it. It's been really cool to hear the unique ways you all describe your practice and what it means to you, and I just can't wait to share all of these in the next episode. So if you haven't sent in a message yet, the deadline is this Saturday, August 24th, and it's really easy. You just go to the podcast page on my website, and there's a button you click. It just uses your computer or phone microphone to record you speaking, like leaving a voicemail. You can also just email me a written response if you'd rather not record your voice. So just keep that short and share a little bit about why you practice. Again, the deadline is Saturday, August 24th, and you can record for me at movedtomeditate.yoga/podcast or email it to me at mail@movedtomeditate.com. And the links, of course, will be in the show notes. Okay, one more reminder to share for right now. The Mindful Movement Teacher Training is coming back this fall, and registration is now open. MMTT is a interdisciplinary program that draws from Buddhism, yoga, qigong, and somatics, exploring both static and dynamic meditation techniques. So, being mindful in movement and in stillness. It's less about advancing anybody's physical abilities through the movement practices, but more like what I call movement based mindfulness. So it gives you practical tools that you can share and facilitate in a whole variety of different settings. There is an early registration discount through part of September, so now is a really good time to check out the program and apply at movedtomeditate.yoga/MMTT. Okay, with all of that, I think we're ready to go. And I really hope you'll find this episode interesting and thought provoking. And more than anything, that you will feel supported to embrace your wholeness and reject these quick fix gimmicks. So here's my conversation with Amanda Hanna. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today. I am here today with Amanda Hanna, who has been a guest on the podcast before a while back. And I think what we talked about then was yin yoga and embodiment from a trauma informed perspective. And since we have talked together on the podcast before, I was thinking maybe this will be a little bit less like a formal interview and more of a free flowing conversation. And we're going to talk about what trauma informed yoga or movement is and isn't, and to highlight some of the kind of problematic things that we've been running across, especially on social media. This came up because Amanda and I were chatting a few months ago, and I was guesting in this beautiful trauma informed facilitator training program that she runs. And we were just kind of chatting before a session. And this kind of came up, and I ended up like going on Instagram later and sending her a couple of posts that I had seen. And I was like, is it just me, or is something about this a little bit off? And she was like, yeah, it's not just you. So we decided to record a conversation about this. And some of it might be yin yoga specific, some of it might be broader than that. I've also been seeing a whole lot of ads and posts using the word somatic anything. And that has been really, some of those are really troubling. So I'm just excited to dig into this with you, Amanda. Mm-hmm. Thanks for being here. Do you want to start with just, sharing a little bit about who you are and what you do for context on this conversation?
Absolutely. Oh, thank you so much for having me back. I love it. And I love to have these conversations because they're always so potent with you and there's so many insights. I'm really excited. And who I am, I'm originally from Canada and I reside in Aotearoa, New Zealand now for about 8 years. And I run Somatics. So I'm the director, founder of Somatics, and we focus on, I guess, human-centered offerings, human-centered and nervous system supportive, trauma-informed offerings in terms of we do therapeutic yin yoga, as well as introductions to trauma-informed practice and the 300-hour trauma-informed facilitator training. So a lot of, like, my background does come from an intersection between psychology as well as somatic movement-based practices. So I take a very top-down and kind of brain-based approach as well as a bottom-up or body-based approach. And we really focus on the intersection there. And I absolutely love it. And exactly what you were saying, there's some things where I'm like, oh, what are we getting up to out here? What is
It's
this?
like the Wild West is what it is.
It really is. Yeah. All these like rogue moments where I'm like, what? I must have missed that day in the training because I didn't see that.
Yeah. So it seems like, and I don't even really know where to start with this, but we'll just circle around. But it just seems like trauma informed has become a huge buzzword. Somatic has become a huge buzzword. There's probably others, but like those are really standing out to me as words that people are kind of applying to things that
actually fundamentally do not seem very trauma informed, or they're not really in keeping with like what I understand somatic practices to really be about. Um, and I can give some examples, but I'm just curious, yeah, where you would take that comment.
Oh, absolutely. And it's one of those moments, it's a bittersweet moment, hey, because on the one side, we're like, amazing. Let's actually start talking about trauma informed. Let's actually start talking about body based modalities. Let's bring them into these spheres. And then the unfortunate side is the commoditization of it and people capitalizing
Yeah,
and turning it into this thing where it's like this short, quick fix, or you have to spend all of this money to do this practice. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's take a step back and come back to not only the literal definition of these things, but the bedrock of them, like the foundation that they sit on is to be well within ourselves, to take a person centered approach and come up with tools and techniques for the long game, where a lot of, I think, what I'm seeing with the
yeah.
prosperity side of it is it's this short, quick fix.
Totally. Yeah. That's it, exactly. It's like we're taking some of these principles, we're not, but people are taking some of these principles and turning them into like a gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
And it almost like reminds me of those, like, I don't know if you probably have like a similar thing to the Weather Channel here, but like when you go on the Weather Channel app, you get these like really low bar kind of ads on there that are like three back moves your chiropractor doesn't want you to know about. And I feel like that's like the level of stuff I'm seeing of it's just so bad. Like it's I just like this week I did a whole rant on my Instagram about this because I got like four ads in one morning and I was like, drop everything. I just can't. I'm going to talk about this. It
Oh,
was like these crazy, huge promises like, do my 30-day somatic program and you will heal your autoimmune system. You'll fix your gut. You'll reduce your inflammation. You'll end your chronic pain. You'll no longer have insomnia. Oh, and you'll lose 22 pounds of belly fat because of cortisol for some reason. And you'll release all your trauma. And I'm like, that's extremely irresponsible, first of all, to make that many medical claims that you probably can't back up and way outside of scope of practice. But, it just also bothers me that this is like targeted towards
mhm.
people who have trauma
Yeah, yeah,
to take advantage of that.
exactly. It's a very exploitive practice. It's a very unethical and irresponsible way to approach a already sensitive nervous system, a nervous system that is trying to navigate a world from that dysregulated space. And then we're like, here's this big bold claim that you'll be able to do all of these things in a short amount of time for a lot of money. And you're like, no, okay, wait a hot minute, what does that mean? And I think the other side of the unethical and irresponsible is what happens after? Like, what happens to that person after they have this? You're promising a big somatic release, which can also be dysregulating if the person doesn't have the tools, the support, the resources wrapped around them.
Hmm.
So, how do they put the pieces back together after this big jarring experience? It's
Where's the integration?
exactly right. Like, where's the
Yeah.
long game of it? It
Yeah.
it's wild.
It's yeah, we were talking a little before we started to record. Like these things are getting so many likes and like millions of followers, and it speaks to something in our culture where like people are hurting and people are looking for solutions. And it's the oldest marketing trick in the book is to play on people's insecurities,
Yeah,
which is gross. But you know, people want that quick fix,
absolutely.
unfortunately.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's really hard to see like quality practitioners and responsible people not getting that kind of attention
Mhm.
online and getting like staying hard to find and staying under the radar because whatever, pop culture or the algorithm kind of favors these big flashy things,
Yeah,
these quick fixes over that long term long game approach that is where the real transformation occurs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think another big thing that I'm noticing is when I do, because I do one-to-one sessions with people as well, and we do a lot of nervous system support, and we work our way through the 3 stages of nervous system restoration or trauma restoration. And a lot of the people that come to me for those sessions have experienced the quick fix. And they're like, I feel
Mm,
worse than I did before. I feel more
mm,
dysregulated than I did before. I feel I have more symptoms coming up because it was a flooding of the nervous system, which one
yeah,
of the definitions of trauma is too much too soon. So, like, it's a direct contradiction to a trauma informed practice. And so,
yeah,
when working with people, it's exactly what you said. We're hurting. Like, we're in a time in our human history where there is so much going on. So, even if it's not personal trauma that we're experiencing, it's maybe the collective trauma, the global trauma, the systemic, vicarious trauma. And then we're doing these practices that flood the nervous system that is causing further re traumatization. And then you see exactly what you said, the quality practitioners that are like living, breathing, human centered practices. And they're getting none of the airtime, none of the focus point. And I think it's because for those types of practitioners, they're like, that's just not what I'm in it for. I'm in it for the reality of this work. I'm in it for the humans. I'm not either in it for the money or the fame or the whatever it is.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, and I also want awareness around you so that people can access quality practitioners. So it's like a
Yeah,
thing where you're like, how do we go about this? How do we get the word out and stay true to our ethos, our values, our beliefs, and everything in
yeah.
between? So
Our
challenging.
integrity.
Integrity.
Oh, it's so challenging. And I feel like that trust relationship is
Mm,
so key if you are trying to do trauma informed work, right? Like
yeah,
being grounded in your integrity as a practitioner, as someone who is offering something, that's like a number one, you
absolutely.
know?
Yeah.
So I feel like this whole idea of like just buying that quick fix from someone on who's like an influencer online or whatever, it also goes against like the relationality piece
Mm,
of where a genuine transformation or a genuine healing process could come from.
yeah. Because I mean, healing, restoration happens in that space of community connection. And I think we are losing it. We're losing a bit of that relationality, that bit of who is this person that's walking alongside me? Do they have my best interests at heart? Do they understand who I am and where I'm heading? Because that's the other thing that I'm seeing with these big, bold claims. They're making it sound like a one size fits all. Like it's like a
Yeah.
here, have this kale smoothie and all will be well. Well, actually, what my nervous system needs is more of like the chia and chocolate. Thank you very much. Or I need this type of smoothie. I need this type of smoothie. I don't even want a smoothie. And so you have all of these different things that you have to take into account. And I don't think we know someone's nervous system or someone's path forward. Like what are their goals with restoration? Where do they want to take it? But then we just have this blanket one size fits all. That for me, I don't know, that just lacks so much of the potency of what I've seen in true trauma informed or person centered approaches. Like what?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. And that
Mhm.
is truly like what a lot of these programs are like, of the annoying sampling of ads of somatic this and that I've seen in the last week. They're mostly like kind of hinting, if you knew my secret recipe of this X number of somatic movements, like these are the right ones,
Yeah,
then you could just like get rid of all your trauma. You could just release all your traumas in 30 days.
right.
And it's just like that same. the same thing. We've seen it so many times in the yoga world with like, what are the three magic poses to fix back pain or
Yeah.
whatever, it's the same kind of thing. Like, it
Mm,
doesn't work that way because human beings are beautifully complex, much more complex than that, you
exactly.
know?
Right.
And it's no one practice. Like, a different practice could work for a different person.
Yeah. And I mean, I always wonder, like, what happens to that person who tries this thing that makes all the bold claims and says, if you do this thing, you will release your trauma. Then that person that does the thing and it doesn't work for them, how do they feel about themselves? Because for me, I would feel like, oh, I'm beyond broken then. I
Oh,
this thing isn't working for me, so what's deeply inherently wrong with me? And then we're perpetuating shame, we're perpetuating the re-traumatization of a nervous system. And it's like, what what are we up to, folks? And I mean, it's
yeah.
not a shame or a blame and making people right or wrong, good or bad, but it's, I think, highlighting unethical and irresponsible practice is really important for the people that are seeking genuine long-term health, genuine long-term well-being and restoration, and just helping people understand that they're not alone in it. And we see it. We see it. It's here.
Yeah. I agree. I'm not a big fan of like calling people out or doing hot takes. I
Mhm.
don't. I probably have more of a social media following if I loved to stir controversy more, but I don't. you know, but it does feel like important to talk about this because this is it feels like such a big trend right now. I just
Huge.
can't go on there without seeing seeing something that I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm also curious to know your thoughts on calling things, like, making the claim that something is trauma informed, and what does it even mean? And like, what's the purpose of it? What's the purpose of calling something trauma informed that doesn't sit on the bedrock of trauma informed or the pillars of it, but yet makes all of these big, bold claims? Like, I'm really curious to know how you navigate it in your own offering. Do I call something trauma informed with the buzzword that it is? Or
Hmm.
do I just call it yin yoga? Like, what do we
Yeah,
do?
I know. Well, I mean, I feel like it's being used as a marketing tactic a
Mhm.
lot. What
Yeah.
I would mean if I said that my offering was trauma informed is just that as a teacher, I have an awareness that people come in with a wide range of life experiences that I may or may not know about, and that I am doing my best to create a space for them that is as safe as possible.
Mhm.
And it's probably not perfect,
Yeah.
but it's sensitive and open to feedback.
Mm.
So, that's some of it, right?
Yeah.
And also kind of trying to be aware of guiding practices in a way that mainly keeps people within their window of tolerance. Or if I see someone going into an edgy space, maybe
Mhm.
giving them some attention in a different way that
Yeah.
helps them work with what's coming up.
I
How
mean,
about you?
yeah, all of the above, everything, and then some. I think there's a big component of my own personal self-regulation practice as well. Like, if I know I'm
Yeah.
stepping in and holding a trauma-informed space, whatever it might be it yoga, movement, the trainings, workshops, anything that I'm offering, it, like, my personal practice is such an important part because I need to know that I can self-regulate and attune to what you're naming, those edgy moments, those potentially dysregulating moments, while simultaneously gifting people the tools and techniques for their own self-regulation, so they
Hmm.
can take it from us interacting in this space, but they can take it into their daily lives. And I think that's another really big part of what I'm seeing in the social media stuff is you can only feel well if you do my offering. You can
Yeah.
only feel well if you're with me. And it's like, aren't we empowering people to live a nourishing, joyful, full life beyond our interaction? And so I think that's another big thing that I'm seeing is a miss, is that like
Hmm.
gatekeeping and holding of practices.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also feel like unless one is trained specifically to work with people's traumas overtly, directly,
Mhm.
where one is a therapist or specialist in that, that's not the same as being a trauma informed movement teacher or yoga teacher, because just being a trauma informed movement teacher or yoga teacher, I don't think it's in my scope of practice responsibly to try to directly affect someone's trauma or to try to help them process it, by bringing things up during class, or I don't even know what else. But it feels like the tone, though, of some of the stuff that I've been seeing is like, come to my class and I will help. We will be processing your trauma, right? Where we will be we will be working on your trauma in this Yin Yoga class, where
Oh,
we'll do these hip stretches and your trauma is going to come up and we're going to whatever we're going to
come
do.
on. Yeah. And
I don't even know.
it's like this magical, almost like they're going to wave a wand and your trauma will be released, poof, gone forever, and all is well. It's like if you just do this one stretch, off she goes. And I really appreciate what you said about the respecting our scope of practice while honoring that trauma informed does not mean trauma releasing. Because that's it. Like those don't mean the same thing. To be trauma informed is to be trained well enough to limit and mitigate triggers, not
Right.
actively do them. And you're like, wait a second. I think we got lost in translation here. Come back.
Yeah, I've literally seen posts where it's like people are treating yin yoga as almost like a form of exposure therapy, or
Mm,
something where we're making the poses into, it's like a challenge you need to confront in order to conquer your trauma, and if you are resisting this pose, that means you really need to do it because that's where the trauma is stuck. And that, it just, first of all, if you're into yin yoga, that isn't very yin. That's very young. But more importantly, it goes against the whole principle of titration,
yeah.
and it's way outside our scope of practice as
Yeah.
teachers.
Like, are you a therapist? Can you help this person process and then help this person integrate? Because you can't in the scope of a 60 maybe to 90-minute public general yoga class,
With 20 other people in the room.
right? We're not here to evoke emotional responses.
Thank you.
It's wild.
I mean, they do come up. It's okay. Emotions come up, but that's very different than saying we're trying to evoke them.
Yeah. Can I get your thoughts on this sentence?
Lay it on me.
I have come across like, and I it's probably beyond my 10 fingers at this point that I can count the amount of times. I know I have had a successful yoga class if at least one person cries.
Ugh. Everyone, I wish you could see Amanda's face on the video just then. I've heard that so many times as well.
Oh,
And um yeah, I do not agree with that. I don't agree with that either.
right? What
Like,
is it?
I don't go to class or I don't practice in order to get my emotions stirred up, right? That's not what I'm in it for.
Ah,
Again, there's nothing wrong with having emotions come up organically. That's
mhm,
part of any embodied practice. But we are not trying to just like go pick at ourselves or like go dig up things. Because again, that's like kind of fix it mentality of like,
mhm.
there's this part of me I don't like, and I've got to dig it out and like get rid of it and throw it away and like not have to feel it anymore.
Yeah, right? And this constant telling everyone that they have to be this constant work in progress Far out. That is such a big, that's so challenging. And I think it takes away from our innate power, beauty, and uh, beauty of being a human is having these things that offer the complexity that you were speaking to, the nuance of who I am, and getting to know myself rather than always actively trying to change myself. Like it's a big
Yes.
difference. Like I want to be able to be in relationship with myself, not constantly battling her and saying, not good enough, this needs to change, need to release this, have to get rid of this. But we're surrounded by that narrative. And it's so unhealthy mentally and physically and everything in between, spiritually, all of it, to constantly be thinking that. I'd rather be in a space that's like, hello, welcome. Let's roll around on the floor in some yin poses and then off we go into the world. Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm here
Thank
for.
you. That is more than enough, right? And
Absolutely.
it is actually so powerful. And I think that mirrors my practice over the long term as well, that it's been so much more about accepting all the different parts of myself, all of my different experiences, you know, the body, the mind, the heart, the whole gamut of it. And that's where wholeness lies, right? That is what we're seeking, right? Not to excavate and like it's constant self-improvement and like getting rid of the parts we don't like or giving them a makeover, right? It's this
Yeah.
is where it's so problematic how this stuff kind of intersects with like assumptions of our culture.
Yeah.
But this is it's a different intention when we come to it in a way that's more like allowing, more
Mhm.
like listening to our experience, listening to our body, um, learning to be with ourselves as we are, right? And that's not easy. That's not easy at all, right? That's why it takes this like very gradual process and practice and good guidance and good community,
Yeah.
right? But what we're really learning to do is sit with ourselves in our wholeness. And that's the transformation.
Exactly. And something you just said reminded me. I work with this organization when you said we're not here to excavate things and kind of dig them up. I work with this organization that works with women wahine post incarceration or during incarceration. And they really wanted to bring yin yoga into their therapeutic offering. So they offer arts based therapy, different workshops, and just really beautiful everything's.
Mm,
And they said, they're like, we would love to bring yin into some of our spaces and places, but every time I go to a yin class, I feel like they're trying to mine for my grief. And as soon as
mm,
they said it, I was like, that, yes, I hear you. It's like we're trying to dig up people's deepest, darkest, and thinking if they just release that deepest, darkest, all will be well. And it's like, but we haven't actually gifted anyone the tools or cultivated their agency and empowerment to regulate through their grief or through their deepest, darkest. So if we're going
hmm
to bring something up for someone, they better be equipped with the tools to hold themselves through it. But we're missing that link as well. Oh, there's so many bits and pieces to it.
Yeah, right. Like why can it not just be enough to like practice feeling safe?
Mm,
Right? To learn how to regulate ourselves
yeah.
and to let these practices these spaces be a container for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm, I wish. That's what I That's what I want. And the interesting thing is, I don't know if you've noticed anything similar, but I've noticed some people they're kind of like actively moving away from some of these spaces and places and seeking out the more like underground, the more like grassroots groups where they're like, this
Mm,
is a space where I know they're going to accept me for all of who I am. And I can show up and do a yin yoga class or a movement class, a dance class, whatever it is, without the hidden agenda. So people are actively seeking out these spaces that are trauma informed without saying they're trauma informed.
yeah.
And I think that's kind of the trend that I'm seeing, because people are seeing what you and I are seeing and they're like, I can't be a part of that. That sounds so intense, overwhelming, everything in between. And where are my people? Because we're
Yeah,
underground, because we're not getting the likes or the kind of publicity of all of that marketing stuff, because we're just here doing the work. We're just here offering the things. Hey, it's challenging.
it is. I love that what you're saying, and it kind of reminds me of that phrase, "Show, don't tell." You know,
Mm,
it's not about the label that we're putting on it, but people can tell
yeah.
but based on how we behave and how we set things up and what it feels like to be in that space and who
Mm.
else is there and how welcoming it feels,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
In my mind, there's so many different things buzzing around, because there's just so much to all of this. And I think it reminds me of the great Maya Angelou, and I'm going to paraphrase, but the when we know better, we can do better.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm seeing in like the Instagram world or the social media world, is when I see some of those things, I don't know about you, but it actively makes me ground into what I know to be true
Hmm.
and not kind of go down that route. I'm like, okay, if I'm seeing this, how do we even be 1% more in our integrity, or 1% more in our helping, like ethical, responsible, and all of that? And even that's a challenge, to constantly having to up level integrity
Hmm.
on that side and kind of keep an eye out on what's happening in the rogue scene. Because like, you want to say it without saying it, and you're like, and we are also not doing that thing.
Yeah, it's so tricky to communicate about it. And
Mm,
yeah, I'm sensitive to like criticizing some of those things because I don't want to sort of secondhand criticize the people who might have gone for those things not knowing that it
absolutely.
wasn't quite right, you know, because it's not their fault, right?
0%. Yeah.
The consumers of this are not like full-time studying trauma and
Yeah,
movement and like don't have the context necessarily to make a good discernment about who's trustworthy.
absolutely. Because in their marketing, like there's some of it where I think back to, if I was in that space, I'm like, this sounds like something to try or to do. And I've been there. I've been there where I've tried something out, or I've done either a training or a workshop or a class thinking, yeah, this will help. And so I absolutely see how we can get swept in it, because it's so um it's enticing. They use all the right words, all the right
Hmm.
things. And so of course we're going to try anything so that we don't feel maybe the discomfort or whatever is currently happening for us. And that's why I think it is unethical, because we're exploiting that in people. Hey.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that makes it hard for people to discern is like there are seeds of truth in
Mhm.
what everyone is saying, including these rogues that we're talking about, because they are talking about like, yeah, trauma affects your body. Like to move through trauma, you're going to have to work with your body, and I
Mm,
100% agree with that. So I'm wondering like how, when we've kind of like all heard the phrase now, the famous Bessel van der Kolk book title, "The Body Keeps the Score," right?
yeah.
And like that's kind of hit the public and everyone's sort of hearing that. What is the difference between saying something like "the body keeps the score" versus like this idea that we need to do these like specific movements to bring up that emotional release to like fix the body?
Mm, that's so good.
Like, how do you tease out the truth from the like where it's going off?
Yeah. Like, how do we
If
how do
that
we
makes
stay on
sense.
track here? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I love that you mentioned there's seeds of truth in all of it, because there are those things that we can look at, and the body keeps the score is absolutely one of them. We know we've got cellular memory, we've got fascial tensile memory. We have all of this stuff in our body that does hold the physiology and the experience that we're typically trying to move in and through. And I think where we kind of need to come back to is, yes, we're going to work with the body to move through, to integrate, to process maybe the undischarged energy or whatever is being held in the body. But what you said earlier, titration is key. And it's that kind of building our tolerance, building our capacity to hold the experience of that moving in and through us. So how am I breathing through when overwhelming emotion comes up in my body? How am I grounding back into the present moment when maybe a triggered memory or coming back into the past? How do I stay present? So, how do I build those tools first and foremost so that when I'm met with the score that my body is keeping, I can regulate and hold myself through the processing and integrating of it? And I think for me, that's what I'm noticing is a bit of the miss. What about you? I'm curious your thoughts on that one too.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think it's like it's great that this idea has gotten out there that
Mhm.
like the body is important. The body has wisdom to give us. But yeah, I draw a lot, I think, on my mindfulness practice
Mhm.
because it's very much about like paying attention to the body, paying attention to sensations, and learning to do that in a way that's curious, kind, non-judgmental, not leaping into interpretation. And so that's all, all of that teaches us to be with ourselves as we are, you know, because I feel like there's just this underlying assumption with a lot of these programs where it's like the body keeps the score and the score sucks. So we're going to throw it out or fix it. So
Yeah,
it's like coming back to just that self-acceptance and you know loving our scars as much as the parts of us that feel pleasant or easy to be with.
I love that. And I think so where that takes my mind as well, and I'm curious your thoughts, is the kind of the making wrong of trauma responses or the making wrong of emotional reaction, whatever it might be, kind of what you were
Hmm.
saying. Like if even in social media, I see these posts of if you notice a student is really fidgety in class, this is that XYZ trauma response. And I'm like, hold the phone. Goodness me. What? How?
Yes.
How are we? And the making wrong of that response is, I think, another massive problem in this space because it doesn't allow us the grace and compassion to acknowledge the amazing adaptive quality of that coping mechanism in the moment. Like your nervous system did her job. She did the thing that got you through the experience and used that survival mechanism, that coping mechanism to keep you as safe as possible through the experience. Yeah, maybe it's not quite as adaptive now. Maybe it's not as useful and beneficial now post the experience. But to make it wrong or to make it this thing that we have to minimize and shift. Like I don't know about you, but I want my nervous system to respond and react. I want her to keep me safe.
That's
So
its job.
yeah, like what?
Yeah, I think I sent you a post that was very much along those lines that
Mm,
was like analyzing certain student behaviors in like a Yin Yoga class and saying that if they do this, they're in fight. If they do this, they're in flight. Like if they complain about the environment or like the music is too loud or the lights are too bright or I don't like how this smells, they're in the fight because they're wanting to pick a fight with you. And I had the same problem with it you had, that it had this very like teacher knows best attitude to it, and it makes a problem of someone's, even if it is their nervous system having a fight response, making a problem out of that. But also, what about the fact that people legit have sensory sensitivities and like maybe they're neurodivergent and there's something about your environment that is invisible to you, but it's not accommodating to them, and that's why they're asking for your help. They're not just complaining to be a pain or to
Yeah.
make you feel insecure as a teacher. Right? We don't have to just write them off and say, oh, you're just in your fight reaction
Yeah.
today.
Right?
Like that is a problem.
It's absolutely a problem. And thinking we know someone's lived experience blows my mind, where we instantly make this judgment rather than getting curious and compassionate and being like, oh, okay, well, what was it about the music? Was it the volume? Was it the rhythm, the pace, the tone? Because for somebody who has misophonia, certain sounds,
Mhm.
they are like a nails on a chalkboard in my body. And that's like, and then if somebody's going to psychoanalyze me, I don't feel safe coming into that class, because the whole time I'm going to be policing myself so that I don't get judged or made wrong by the person clearly observing me the entire time. Why are we, why, why? Make it make sense.
Well, and it still doesn't make sense from a trauma informed
Uh-huh.
perspective if what we're about is giving people choices so that they can exercise their self agency and select the options that are appropriate for them in that moment. And
Mhm.
perhaps it's an edge for them to even speak up for their needs. And it's huge for them to do that. And if they trust you enough to speak up to you, like, don't be offended that they complain, to be honored that they trust you with their complaint, you know. Try to work with them and try to collaborate with them.
Yeah.
I know it's not easy to like hear, oh, there was something off about your class for me today, but right, if we can kind of relax the ego around that a little bit and just like have that
Mhm.
collaborative moment with people,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it just creates such a better environment for everyone.
Because what comes up for me in that as well is that moment of, if you as a facilitator cannot regulate yourself through receiving feedback, well, wouldn't that be your own trauma response then, if we're keeping with the
Oh,
same idea? Right? So I'm like, if you don't, yeah, we could
you
call,
turned it right back around the other way.
full circle, folks, full circle. But you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
if we're going to keep doing this to everyone else, then we have to be willing to look in the mirror and say, well, what's
yeah,
coming for me here? What is it about receiving that type of feedback that makes me want to call it their trauma response and make it about them, rather than asking myself, oh, okay, I'm noticing this feedback feels a bit tender for me. It's hitting something. What's my responsibility in this? How do I notice what comes up, or what is in my control and out of my control? Like, maybe the temperature isn't something I can control. So, okay, non attachment to that. And how do I hear feedback without getting defensive and deflecting it back to the other person? Like, it's a whole thing. It's a whole rabbit hole.
it's a whole thing, and I feel like what it probably is hitting that's tender inside of the teacher is like that really beautiful desire to create a space that's helpful for people. Like we really want our class to be beneficial,
Yeah.
and it is a leap of faith to do that by kind of opening things up and letting people have choices rather than trying to like micromanage everything and make it perfect,
Mm-hmm.
which it's like that's a little bit counterintuitive in some ways. You'd think like to create the safe trauma informed environment, I'm going to control everything, but it doesn't actually work that way.
Not at all. Not at all. And this is something I often kind of bring forward for people is, we're not trying to, when it comes to trauma informed, we're not trying to make a space that's cotton wool or bubble wrapped. We're trying to soften the edges, yes. And we are trying to cultivate, foster and make even stronger each person's innate resilience and tolerance for discomfort. So if we're giving people tools and giving them those resources that in moments of discomfort, so say music is a bit too loud and it is starting to feel dysregulating, have we even offered people tools to like sit with that discomfort or maybe hold it? And then they still get to decide, no, it's still too much, too loud. Great. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
let's work with this. And there might be times where that person can breathe through a certain song, even where they're like, oh, okay, I can sit with this song, not loving it, and I can sit with it. So it's like there's so much to consider and think about. Hey.
That's the both and I love that because when we are practicing in a group or in a community, there are times where our needs bump up against others and their needs. I know I ran a yoga studio, and this piece is so making me think of like a particular incident that happened that, like, for me, it highlights how helpful it is when we actually can get to know our students and have a relationship, because then these incidents are in that context. It's like what
Mm-hmm.
happened this one time was our lovely front desk assistant got there early to open the studio and kind of sweep up and get everything ready for class, and she was just like in this great mood that morning, like it's a beautiful day, people are coming for yoga, and she was like sweeping and she burned some incense in the studio. And then, of course, students start arriving, and the student who cannot handle incense came that day. And the student got into the studio and rolled her mat, smelled the smoke and the incense, and flipped out.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of panicky, right? She genuinely has trouble with that. And, it was like the kind of room, it didn't have windows that we could open. It was the fan, but like she kind of went back out in the lobby and told off this poor desk assistant who, with all good intentions, was just trying to create a beautiful space for
Mm-hmm.
people to practice,
Yeah.
and who didn't know this would be a problem for this particular person. So she told off the desk assistant. She stormed off and left, wrote me an angry email and said, I don't know if I am going to ever come back. And I had to deal with that.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, now I've got to try to put back together this desk assistant who's really hurt and thinks, what did I do wrong? And talk to
Mm-hmm.
this student who ordinarily is a really lovely person, but who had a total like inappropriate fit at the studio and was really mean to a desk assistant who didn't deserve that, really.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it's like, okay, I see this really put you in a state of panic. Like this took you outside of your normal self. Like you were
Mhm.
upset. I get that. I can't have you yelling at my desk assistants, but we will be sure that we do not use fragrances before that
Mhm.
class.
Yeah.
I will write a note. People will know we will not do that because I want you to feel welcome there.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's just when you can have that context though, and like, no, this is genuinely a problem for this person, and I can't have them like behave in a way that's
Yeah,
disruptive for others.
exactly.
That's where like this whole work comes in. Like we need to be grounded enough as facilitators to like see all the different sides of that and to
Mm,
communicate around it.
yeah, yeah. And it comes back to that whole, I think, ethos of yoga itself. Like if we think about the definition, that union, coming into union with self, coming into union with other, within and without. And I think about that community again. Like it's very much when we can come into that space of noticing what's dysregulating me or noticing what's setting me off. Do I have the tools, the capacity, the anything to hold that, to move through it without taking it out on other people? And then
Mhm.
do I have the capacity to be like, I yelled at you when I was very not okay. And can we repair this? Can we come back into community? Can we come back into relating? And it's like that's this whole kind of, I would say, like messy middle. Like we're trying to figure out these, how do we relate to ourselves? How do we relate to others? How do we take responsibility for our reaction and build our capacity to be like, okay, yeah, I smell incense. I notice the signs in my body to be like, this is not okay for me. What am I going to do? And then
Mhm.
acting on whatever that looks like. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like really building our capacity to move through the world again and be in the world, be with other people without being made wrong, or and being able to recognize when we are wrong. Right? Like
Yeah,
all of it. It's
right.
all
Well,
of
being
it.
able to deal with the imperfections of the world, like we
Yeah.
can't bubble wrap the world, unfortunately, to make it
Yeah.
comfortable.
One
So
day.
we need these skills, right? Like hopefully the yoga space or whatever, kind of movement or community class you go to is the safe laboratory for developing these skills to take out into the
Mm,
world,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't know if you've seen the same kind of narrative in some of the spaces and places, but it's a very I focused. I only take care of me. I'm restoring me, I. And yes, absolutely, 100%. And as we restore self, as we come back and do the work on us, it's so that we can then be back in the world and relate to people that are different to us. They think, look, act, everything different to who we are. And we have the capacity to do that when we do the work on ourselves. But we have to remember this community based collective healing as well, because we're all going through it at the moment on a global scale. We're experiencing things that I wish never in history did we have to experience. And
Hmm.
how do we stay in and of the world? Ugh, so many tangents that
Yes.
could go down. There's a
No,
million.
that's such a beautiful and important point. Yeah. I was
Just,
thinking a moment ago when we were talking about sort of the quick fix, the like three magic moves, the 30-day somatic program. What do you think about? There seems like there's some of these programs that are kind of like bottom up only. Like
mm,
you could just do these moves and release your trauma, you'll be good. And you don't need to talk about it or think about it or reflect on it to integrate it. Like, what do you think? She's laughing, so we already know what she thinks. But what would you like to say about the effectiveness of that?
I mean, I have so many thoughts and feels on this. I think what I'm noticing is because in kind of modern, more Western Eurocentric spaces and places, we've we've predominantly had a brain-based approach. So we've had a very top-down cognitive
Hmm.
approach
Lots of
for
talk therapy.
lots of like CBT or cognitive behavioral therapy, lots of focus and emphasis on that. And what I think I'm seeing now is a pushback against that, which fair enough, because it can't be an only brain based approach, but we've
Hmm.
pendulated far too much to the body only, which
Hmm.
we're going to end up doing the same thing. If we put body on a pedestal and say it's only bottom up and only body based, then we're doing the exact same thing as people saying only bottom down or only top down approaches or brain based approaches. We have a mind and a body, we have a mind body complex. So to only focus on one either negates or can confuse and disconnect the other. So to take a bottom up approach, absolutely. Body based practices, somatic based practices are so invaluable and so important. And the brain is a meaning making machine. The brain is something that has to make sense of things. And so to say, sorry, brain, you don't need to make sense of this, I only need to feel it, that's going to cause dysregulation from the mental side, because mental side is going to be like, what am I feeling? What is going on? What is this?
Yeah.
And it needs to be both. Like as you do the body based practices, the maybe somatic explorations, experiencing, whatever it might be, bring the mind along with you. Bring the mind along so it can meaning make and create narrative and better understand what it has learned from nervous system restoration or from body based practices. Just like when we think about something and we do a cognitive approach or a brain based approach, then the body needs to catch up. The body then needs to integrate and experience that. So I'm very much of the belief that it's brain, body, everything in between. And like I've studied psychology, studied somatics in different forms and fashion. And so I've seen what happens when we take a only this approach and not a both
Hmm.
and it prolongs the experience, it can dysregulate the experience and disrupt it. The most success I've seen for people is when it's a both and it's more sustainable. It's a more sustainable
Hmm.
approach to overall well-being and overall restoration. What are your thoughts on it? Tell me.
I love that. No, I totally agree with that. And that's another reason why, like, our movement class space is not the whole answer for healing
Yes.
someone's trauma, right? It can be super valuable as a space for them to learn how to connect with the body and learn how to be with sensations and develop some tolerance around that, some
Mm-hmm.
discernments around what sensations are, to be able to name the different kinds of sensations and feelings and emotions, to get, acquainted with, like, oh, these are the kinds of thoughts I'm having, practicing those mindfulness skills. But it doesn't end there, within the space of that class. That's why I think, if you are dealing with trauma, that's why, further support is so helpful, because
Mm-hmm.
we need that individualized, process and guidance.
Yeah. And something that helps us integrate these experiences on all of those levels, like it the work isn't just in the moment when you're either thinking about something or making sense of it, or maybe you're feeling through it, moving through it. That integration process is extended. The integration is maybe days, weeks after, where mind, body makes sense of that experience, integrates it on like a cellular, neurobiological level, so that we can move forward from this new experience, what we've learned from it, what we've experienced in it. And that integration time is so important as well. And that's, I think, my other issue. We talked about it earlier, is with a quick fix, we really miss that potency of integration of what does this mean for me now? What does this big change in my mind and body mean? And how do I put it into practice in daily life? Like, have you ever had one of those experiences? And this might help some people make sense of this or feel into it. Have you ever had one of those experiences? You go on a training, you go maybe on a retreat, a workshop, whatever, and it's a big, deep, intense experience. And then, like, the facilitator says, hey, maybe don't make any big decisions for the next month because all of this has to settle and land and integrate. And then you leave that experience and you're like, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to do this thing. Off I go over here. I'm going to travel the world. And you have all of these big plans. And then once you keep integrating, you're like, I'm not going to quit my job. I'm okay. All is well. Like, have you ever had that experience? Like, we have to integrate stuff. Hey.
I love that example. That's interesting. I think it's very good advice. Not to, I haven't heard that specifically put that way, but yeah, yeah, definitely. Like, I have had deep experiences on retreats after much practice, right?
Mhm.
And with skillful assistance of teachers on the retreats, with things coming up and things kind of moving through. Um, and there is always kind of that, well, in my tradition, like in insight meditation, they also talk about, like, the the second the second half of the retreat is the part that happens after you get home.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Exactly.
it's like how you are actually coming back into your life with the insights and experiences that have occurred, and just looking around at, what's the same, what maybe looks a little bit different, and how do I live through this new lens that has perhaps, you know, shown up for me in this process. But I love that advice. That's a good piece to add to it. Like, don't go making any giant life-changing decisions right after those big transformation moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Because and that's, I think, why we wait for that period of time is also we start to question things. Like, as we start to make sense of what we've been through, how our nervous system moves through the world today, post my past experiences, we start to like wake up to our boundaries, and we wake up to things that aren't necessarily aligning for us or supporting us. And we can have this big moment of like, cut that out, not doing that anymore, quitting this, stopping that. And it's like, and maybe it's a yes. And there will be moments where it's like, actually, how I was showing up in that relationship wasn't the healthy way. What I was doing in my workplace maybe wasn't the healthy way. So rather than quitting the job, maybe it's a self reflection moment, or integrating what I've learned and moving through my workplace more powerfully or more mindfully and intentionally. But we need that time to actually integrate, feel with it, sit with it, be with it, to then make the decision. Like there's a reason that whole adage of sleep on it is true. That's integration time. Then we wake up in the morning and
Yeah,
we're like, okay, right, this is what I'm going to do.
I love that. And I think this just speaks to this whole piece about this is a long-term process. This is a lifelong practice. And that's where the actual resilience gets built, where we get stronger from these challenges we've had,
Mm,
rather than thinking of our trauma as a problem or a weakness. But it's something that has made us who we are, and that we have been able to mine and harvest the wisdom from that. And that is like the most beautiful thing. And it does not happen quickly or overnight.
right? Exactly. It's not, it isn't, I don't know that I've come across any quick fix solutions. And like the other part that I'm wondering about is, haven't we learned from other quick fix fads? Like, haven't we learned that they aren't a thing?
Why doesn't that apply here?
We know that.
We
We know
know
this.
this
We've seen
deep
this
down.
field.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
we know better, right?
we do. We do. And I think it is time for, especially in the yoga space that's not regulated. There's no standardization, there's no governing or regulatory body for practices, best practices, or malpractice. So we are in a self-governing space, which great, and that creates so much space for the rogue,
The
the
bad actors.
exactly. So it's this
Yeah.
moment of holding our moral compass while holding others higher, and also saying like, hey, not so sure about this, and being able to like communicate with our peers, our colleagues, the people that we work alongside. And I think naming things if we see something afoot, being like, I'm really curious about your recent marketing post or your blah blah blah, help me understand this. And like being in those conversations as well. And I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest, I haven't reached out to any of those like 1.5 million followers that are saying,
They don't know who I am. I don't know who they are. Like, they don't
exactly.
care, right?
Yeah. They're like,
If
uh-huh.
it
And
if it was somebody I knew and I was like, where are you going with this? That might be different.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, this makes me have a question mark. What's going on here? And coming from that space of understanding or collaboration and wanting the best for them, because I don't want them to get, I guess, hurt either. I want to keep them safe as well as the people that they're supporting
Mm-hmm.
safe. Because I don't think we know enough or maybe talk enough about re-traumatization in these spaces. I think
Yeah.
that's another key component. The flooding that can lead to re-traumatization maybe isn't understood or isn't acknowledged. And it's a slow and steady, like you wouldn't jump into the deep end if you've never had swimming lessons. You would go get your swimming lessons, get some flotation devices, maybe a life jacket, some goggles. You would get all of these things first and then dip your toe into the deep end.
Yeah.
And then over time, then maybe you're swimming in the deep end. Maybe you can take the flotation devices off. And like that's this long-term process. We're setting ourselves up for the future. And we need all of these things in place as we go. So much to
It's a
it.
good analogy.
Mm.
on that whole thing of regulation. For a second, I thought you were saying that everyone's just dysregulated in yoga, which was funny. But it's not a regulated field. If you are a certified yoga therapist through IAYT, there is a process of
Yeah.
people can complain, and there are ethical standards, and you can like lose your certification
I
through
wish
that. I
that's
don't know
possible.
if that exists with Yoga Alliance.
Nah, no,
Probably should, but
I think you're right. I think that's one of the only ones that do have it yoga specific. I mean, I think
yeah,
somatic
yeah,
experiencing has a somewhat similar process, but like Yoga Alliance, there's no checks or balances or points of recourse or a complaints
yeah.
process. So I, maybe yoga therapy just needs to like branch out and cover more of these spaces and places to help us out. Like,
Maybe. I don't know if it's, the perfect solution either, but it's at least
no.
there's a process that's been articulated,
Yeah,
that there's this code of ethics and that is important. But
yeah, it is.
yeah,
Yeah, there's so much to it. There's so many pieces to the puzzle, and we just keep fumbling our way through it.
I mean, to some degree, that's like kind of part of us learning and working with humans. But I think there do need to be guardrails.
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, this has been a juicy conversation. This has gone by really quickly. I'm wondering if there's anything more you'd want to add to it for now, or if you're feeling like this is a good place to tie a bow on it.
I think I could talk to you for 17 hours about this. I could go on for days and days and days. And I think the main thing is just thank you so much for opening these conversations and being able to have constructive conversations where we can learn and name the things that make us feel uncomfortable as well. I think sometimes we can hold that back and be like, oh, is it just a me thing? Is it something? Is this my trauma response? Should I not say anything? So I really love that we can open these spaces and just dig in and say, and what about the other side of the coin? Let's have a moment of discernment and unpack these things. So thank you so much for creating these spaces and places.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for being willing to have this conversation. And, I used you as a sounding board. That's like, I
Mm.
sent you some of these posts I saw that I'm like, is this just a me thing? Am I just being grumpy today? Or is there a problem here? And, like if you have trusted friends and colleagues
Yeah.
on social media, you can run stuff by them too. And I
Yeah.
think that helps us to sort of be having these conversations. Maybe they're happening somewhat in private, but it's,
Mhm.
that's part of having a community of colleagues and why that's helpful.
Absolutely. I love it. Thank you so much.
Amanda, where can people find you if they want to work with you or learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm at somapsych.org for our website and soma.psych on Instagram. So Somapsych is the business. You can also email me at info@somapsych.org if there's anything you're curious about. And I'm just always happy to connect with new people and see what y'all are up to.
Wonderful. Thanks again for taking the time for this and just being willing to like dig into the thorny world, the wild west of this topic on social media and beyond. But I
Yeah.
really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
So that's today's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend, subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and help others find it that way. To learn more about my work, the Moved to Meditate class library, courses, or teacher trainings, go to movedtomeditate.yoga. This is Addie D. Hilster. Thanks so much for listening.